Comp systems can help, again, starting very broad, hold partners accountable for doing what the firm needs them to do. We want to achieve, so one of the things I do is strategic planning. And if you go through that process and you get in a room and you talk about a vision and you talk about strategies and you then get down to actions, eventually, we slap high fives and we leave the room, but we need partners to carry it forward. Implementation is a huge piece. So how do we incentivize partners to do that when they're busy? We need comp to be tied to that, to say, if you're achieving your goals that we set in strategic planning or whatever planning process you use, we're going to reward you financially. Here's what that looks like. Achieving individual goals as partners, production and business development metrics as examples. We want to reward people for doing that. We want to have goals, first of all, and then reward people for hitting meaningful goals. Complying with the written roles and expectations of being a partner. Partners, I don't know if you know this, it's a myth out there that partners have no accountability at all or shouldn't. And I think folks get into trouble if they really support that philosophy. I think even partners need roles and expectations. That your managing partner really is kind of keeping the partners in line with those things. Sometimes it hurts if we have one partner who's out of line and we can't touch their comp, it becomes difficult. Again, we want to incentivize, we want to use all the tools at our disposal to incentivize partners to be good team players, to work well with each other, and to do what we want them to be doing. Adding intangible value. One of the biggest issues in strategic planning this year is staffing. In the staffing crisis, and a lot of firms are understaffed, it's hurting their capacity, it's hurting their ability to grow. So staffing, attracting staff and retaining staff and developing staff into future leaders are topics that almost every firm is thinking about right now. Well, who's going to drive that bus forward? The partners need to have clear goals and then again be financially rewarded and incentivized to drive that staffing progress. Otherwise it feels like a hobby, and nobody's got time for a hobby. Not at work anyway. Act consistent with the one firm concept. We talked about that. No coasting. And I was telling Lakita, if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to just shoot them into the chat or the question box, and I'm happy to take them as we go. As we design, either redesign or tweak partner compensation systems for firms, one of the things that we hear from partners, and this is like partners who are not on the comp committee or not necessarily deciding how the comp allocation is going to happen. We hear from them, they want transparency. How is my compensation determined? I don't want a black box. I want to know, where's the target so I can hit it? What are the criteria you're going to evaluate me on? If it feels too nebulous, it's discouraging. And I think nothing feels worse than putting in what you thought was a good year, and then let's say the comp committee gives you a lot less than you thought you were going to get, and now you're disappointed. That's a frustrating feeling. We don't want that. We want to know pretty clearly what's expected, where am I relative to the expectation, and then my comp is in line with that. It's more about just expectation setting. They want to understand how they can impact their comp. How do I increase my comp? If I'm so inclined, if I want to make another 100 or 200,000, how do I do it? What would I need to do to get there? And again, to feel like, yeah, well, based on my performance, I feel like that comp is fair. So we want all those things as partners, and so our comp system needs to be taking those into account. Before we get further into comp, I do want to throw out the caveat that money is not everything. And so I put on the left-hand side here, average partner compensation for equity partners, according to the Rosenberg survey, by size of firm. And net fees ranges between 300 to 800,000, with I think 582 was the average among all firms this last year. It's a lot of money. It's a good amount of money. And this is the average partner comp. And then on the right-hand side, not necessarily to scale, but there's research that shows that as we get more money, particularly over kind of $75,000 to $100,000, that first 75,000 means you've got some safe housing, you might take one vacation, you've got medical insurance. That really increases your well-being. The next 100 grand increases it somewhat, but not as much. The next 100 grand increases it, but less so and less so and less so. So if we're talking about telling a partner to go, they can go from 450 to 575 next year, it matters, but it's all relative, right? So I think compensation certainly drives performance, and it's not the only driver of performance. So you're going to need other motivations, internal motivations, and kind of know the partners in the room and what drives them to perform as well.